study that he is now commissioning to go and look at buying. He listed as crypto assets for a strategic stockpile within the United States. Now, I think that this one is probably the most controversial, not because it's in there, but because of the way it's worded. What we have seen historically is that he always talked about a Bitcoin stockpile, and the Bitcoin community did a lot of work for Donald Trump. They donated a lot of money. They really, really got the word out for him. David Bailey and Bitcoin Magazine and many others really went to extreme lengths to help support Donald Trump. And so I think that there's a lot of people in the hardcore Bitcoin community that feel a little let down. That way, why are we not talking about a Bitcoin stockpile? Now we're talking about this crypto stockpile.
Our video today is going to be a little bit about specifically, okay, it's a short one, but specifically about the differences between a Bitcoin strategic stockpile and a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Now, the third thing that is kind of like surrounding the fence here is a strategic digital asset reserve. But I really want to focus primarily on the differences between a Bitcoin reserve and a Bitcoin stockpile. So right now you have Trump coming in, and prior to him coming in, you also had Senator Cynthia Lummis talk about doing a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Now, if you're not familiar with Bitcoin and the differences between Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, for right now, what you want to kind of put in an envelope and just kind of use it as your broad strokes of understanding the implications of Bitcoin and how cryptocurrency works in general, because there's a difference. And a lot of times people really want to pronounce that. And those people that are really stressing the difference between Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, even though Bitcoin is a type of cryptocurrency, they'll call themselves Bitcoin maximalists. Now, this is important because a Bitcoin maximalist is going to push for a Bitcoin strategic reserve. Now, the reserve, if they get a Bitcoin strategic reserve, now we're talking about a method that the federal government can hold, store, and purchase Bitcoin. Right? That's. I'll go ahead and say that's going to be our best case scenario, and I'll explain why in a moment. But most of the time, a Bitcoin maximalist is only going to push and advocate for a Bitcoin strategic reserve. They would appreciate a stockpile, right? But that doesn't give clear framework and guidelines on how to continue to purchase Bitcoin, or how would they store it. Really, would it be a mechanism that is going to not just be a stockpile the way we stockpile, like, oil or cheese, and it's more like in an emergency case scenario, this is here, right? A stockpile versus a reserve is giving you an idea that it's going to be a reserve asset for a particular use case, right? And you could think and associate that more with gold. I understand there's times where we're stockpiling gold, but think of it when gold was the reserve, because that's what they're talking about when they're saying Bitcoin as a strategic Bitcoin reserve, because they want that to be the reserve asset that will soon be the asset that is going to start being the primary reserve asset of the world instead of the US dollar. They're going to say, a Bitcoin maximalist would say that we need to have Bitcoin be the world's reserve currency and the world's reserve store of value, the world's reserve asset. They're going to be completely cult-minded about it. Now, I'm saying cult-minded because that's the best way to kind of encapsulate how they view it, because they want nothing else. They want nothing else. It's only Bitcoin. That's it. Don't even talk about crypto. Everything else is a shit coin. This is the way a Bitcoin maximalist will approach things. And for the most part, they're doing that because when you do a deep dive on every single different project in the digital asset space when it comes to cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, most of the time you're going to come to the same conclusion that they're trying to just make simple for you. Is nothing is like Bitcoin. Nothing can actually serve the same purpose that Bitcoin can serve. It's the only decentralized, secure protocol that is bound by energy, that does not have any type of centralization at all. There's not even a founder or an ownership group or a foundation. The founder went anonymous, Satoshi Nakamoto. There's a core group of people that do developments, but they have to be voted on by the whole Bitcoin network, all the nodes, the validator nodes, in order to make those new software developments and patches and upgrades active. So it's a true decentralized worldwide currency system. And In that sense, there is nothing else like it. There is no other cryptocurrency project that is completely decentralized in this way. In every other project, even the ones that are the most decentralized, you have things like, funny enough, Dogecoin, Litecoin, things like that, like stuff that is kind of not a big name, and it's some of them are kind of a joke, like Dogecoin. Though I believe there's a lot of use case and value there because it's a marketing coin, in my opinion. It brings people in, but they're fairly decentralized. They've been around for a long time, right? But you still have people that founded it that are around that people will associate with. And if there was changes to that group or those founders, it could cause issues with the network and the ecosystem altogether. Versus Bitcoin is truly decentralized. So you could definitely use it as a store of value for a worldwide current a store of value currency. You could use it to be something that would be like digital gold, which is why you'll hear a lot about that. And there's no other assets out there that you could do that with. Now, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, and I want to explain why. And I also want to explain why I believe that the Bitcoin strategic reserve is by far our best bet. I believe it will happen, but I do believe that prior to that time, that we're going to see a Bitcoin strategic stockpile, probably, and I hope, this is more just my hope, that it's done by an executive order, just so we can keep, like Trump already said, that we can keep the Bitcoin that we already hold. We hold, I can't remember the amount, but oh gosh, I want to say it's like, honestly, I'm going to mess it up if I say it. I don't know if it was 16,000 or how much it was, or how much, $16 billion worth, I believe is what it is. Not 16,000, but $16 billion worth of Bitcoin, however much that works out to. Which is not much, but it's the start of the stockpile, right? So we need to do that. He said he was going to do that at the Bitcoin convention back in Nashville, back in July. So I believe that promises kept, promises made, promises kept. I believe he'll do that. But as we continue, and you hear this talk of a Bitcoin strategic digital asset reserve, was kind of the what they alluded to, that they're going to research this through the executive order, right? They're putting a task force together for that. Great, that's a good idea. But they're going to come to the same conclusion that any other person has come to as they've researched it, that the only one that can really serve as a store of value that is secure, decentralized, and again, bound by energy. So there's an analog aspect of it, the miners, the actual mining computers that you need to own in real life. It's not all in the digital world that is there. So as a nation state, you can hold a certain amount of tangible, not machinery, but hardware that allows you to secure that digital space. Very unique, very important. We've done enough videos, and I hope that you've seen some of the stuff I put out there, or you found your own way to understand what Bitcoin is. And it's an ongoing learning event because it does change a little bit, but it's just very multifaceted and detail oriented. That's why I love it. But I want to say, again, I'm not a Bitcoin maximalist, and it's very important to know that as they look at this, I believe they're going to come up with a framework, right, to where we have a blend of both, because you're going to need Bitcoin as your reserve asset, but it can't serve as a currency. It could if the world was different, but the way our world is set up, they're not going to choose it. They're not going to choose Bitcoin to be something that people are truthfully using as that currency, that means of exchange. It just won't happen. Reason being is it is a finite amount. It doesn't have much elasticity, if any. You have volatility and range in price, but you have a very fixed amount, and a fixed amount that is being mined and minted out every year, right? And that it reduces. You can't have a currency without elasticity like that when you're actually trading between countries. Reason being is you need some bit of elasticity, meaning that you can add a little bit of inflation or deflation to that currency so that you can manipulate that currency, and you can start adding a little bit of credit to it and some debt. And I don't want this. I'm not saying this is the way it should be. I'm saying that you need this in order to negotiate, in order to deal with problems as they come. And I'm also here to tell you that because you need that, and because we've had that in the prior stores of value we use, and the reason we came off the gold standard and everything else is because humans are going to always want to manipulate the money, because it's one form of warfare. It's financial warfare instead of using military warfare. It's psychological, right? It's also something that you can do when you're bargaining and you're negotiating. If anybody's ever bargained and negotiated, it's a very psychological game. And again, well, not your other option could be warfare when it's country to country. And I'm not familiar with that, but I get the idea. And that's where you just have brute force, right? And you're still negotiating. You're still psychologically playing a game with that other nation, from top down. When it comes to generals and leaders of countries, it's all a psychological game. And the same thing with our economic warfare that we have from country to country. That's why you need the elasticity. That's why you need a way to manipulate it. That's not a good thing. I'm not a fan of this, by the way. I'm just telling you, this is how the world works right now. And without that, you're just not going to get a legislative body to approve something like Bitcoin to be a strategic reserve where we're using it as a currency as well. But you will get it the way that we use, not just a currency, but a store of value, and a way that you can actually trade with other countries, right? Maybe it's not going to be a straight up means of exchange like you would think with dollars, right? But we need things like treasury securities. And you can do that with a strategic, you can create digital treasury security like mechanisms with something that has some elasticity and has some programmability above and beyond a fixed amount, a fixed supply, and something as sound and clean and beautiful as Bitcoin. Not going to do it. Okay, you can put paper above it like we do with gold, but that's not still going to give you what you actually want when it comes to the high level negotiations that we see with central banks and countries right now. Again, I want to just reiterate, I am not a fan of this, but I'm not stupid enough to think that it's going to go away. I am stupid enough to realize that I don't know enough about how the negotiations happen from country to country and how they're using our debt and store of value, because we have the reserve asset and we have the reserve currency with the dollar and the US Treasury security. And then we have the strongest military. So we have all the leverage, and we use our Treasury securities, our bonds, our debt that you see that you probably don't understand either, right? You think you understand and you think debt is bad, which it is. But at the same time, it's a leverage system and it's a manipulation system to keep people in order without having to not nuke them, but bomb them and fight and war with them. And so that's what we do very often. And you're not going to take that away anytime soon, because if you take that away, you're going to see this world devolve into barbarism quicker than you could imagine. And that is why when you think of and you see these headlines of Bitcoin strategic reserve, Bitcoin strategic stockpile, strategic digital asset stockpile, and it's kind of something that even the smartest minds are kind of tiptoeing around, because it's not just a theoretical anymore. It's going to come to fruition. And now they're being faced with these difficult problems, right? Which is warfare, digital warfare, financial warfare, actual warfare. And now that you have Trump in here that's going to actually approve something, and his administration and Congress, we already have bills in for a strategic Bitcoin reserve, and states are getting involved as well. Now you're dealing with people that do have an understanding of how we're using financial manipulation, warfare, and monetary manipulation, monetary debasement, monetary power, monetary trade, monetary leverage to get what we want and to keep the peace. So these people that are theoretically thinking like a Bitcoin maximalist, in the future, Bitcoin could save everything because our US dollar is being debased and the central banks are debasing everything. So true that it is. And Bitcoin theoretically could save it, could save our world from being this debt economy and this, credit system worldwide that has just gone into what we're soon to see debt spirals. We're seeing countries do it already. We're seeing people start to deal with financial hardships and poverty in third world countries that are going to start being a serious issue, all because of these debt economies, all because we're trying to balance a house of cards instead of warring with each other like we used to. I'm not pro-war. We're dealing with human nature. Okay? We're dealing with people that are broken. We're dealing with people that are at their base case. You all know it when you go to bed. Your number one thought is self-preservation, right? Self-preservation. And there's layers on top of that. You don't want to be uncomfortable. You don't want to be unstable. You want to be financially secure. You want to be safe. You want to have self-preservation. You first, and then your family, and then your town, and then your country. but you're really all about self-preservation. It's a human nature trait, right? Anybody could see it in the wild. We see it. They're not even ashamed. But humans are very interesting that we want to say that no, we're not. We need what humans tell each other is all we need is freedom. And with freedom, we'll do the right thing. And right is a very arbitrary, it's a very, what doing the right thing is a very subjective idea, right? It's different to everybody. It's not an objective fact from human to human, right? So when you apply these theories, right, that people have, computer sciences and Bitcoin maximalists, they have theories about things. When you apply it to the real, where the rubber meets the road, military implications, foreign and geopolitical landscapes and trade, monetary leverage, monetary trade, monetary policy. When you apply that to diplomacy, when you apply it to, gosh, I mean, how much more can we go? When you apply it to humanitarian issues, when you like we have the World Bank, we have the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, International Monetary Fund, yeah, the IMF. So the issue is when you take real world issues that not everybody's going to be able to hear about on Fox News or CNBC or Twitter or X, that we have high level intelligence agencies, governments dealing with, right? And now we're starting to merge that with computer science, game theory on a software protocol that can now take over and be a digital currency and a digital reserve asset of the world. Bring them together. And now you're really going to start seeing people stop talking, and you're going to see things having to come to a fruition in a way that there's no more bullshit. Okay, the buck stops now. There's no more of that, And so we can't have Bitcoin maximalism out there where they want to take their theory, because you can tell with a Bitcoin maximalist and with somebody that's in that mindset where they're just very intolerant of any other ideas, and to listen to people that are already in a position of power, that are in, for example, like the Federal Reserve, Congress, high level intelligence, that know what the current situation is. We know it's bad, but they know what the actual issues are. Then you have somebody who's over here that's a Bitcoin maximalist and might be very intelligent and knows how it works better than anybody else, but he only has theories of what he thinks can happen if we had Bitcoin be a reserve currency of the world or a reserve asset or to replace the dollar. None of those things can happen with theory. It's great. It's cute. It's really nice that everybody has a kumbaya moment. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. There's a baseline epistemological axiom, a truth called total depravity. And we always, as you know, with this channel, our core thesis is to be able to bring you, and mission statements, to be able to bring you a revelational epistemological view on all subject, revealed knowledge. God's character is our standard, right? On what we measure all the current events upon. And one of our core tenets is to understand the doctrine of total depravity. Now, total depravity is going to tell you that every human is born into a world and a reality that its information, its knowledge is antithetical to the truth. That the truth is only in the holiness and the holy character of God. And we're not privy to that information without his redemptive work that he did through his son, and then the wisdom that can be imparted to us through the Holy Spirit. Once that happens, you can see how God has revealed himself through scripture, and you can see right there what real truth is, what real righteousness is, what a standard of justice really looks like. Now, seems like we're bringing two crazy things together, right? But the idea is when you start taking theory, even if it's through computer science and then a philosophical theory, Bitcoin maximalism, and you try to mix it and blend it with real world geopolitical, military, and sociological situations we're dealing with, right? You definitely have to deal with how we got to the state in the world. How did we start debasing our currency so bad? Why did a central bank start making mistakes? Why did we need a central bank? Why can't we deal with a gold standard? Why did we have to go to something like what we call a dollar standard where we can manipulate the currency? Why is there greed? Why is everybody so worried? And why is everybody always making a mistake when they get a position of power? Why does absolute power absolutely corrupt, right? Why are these things real? This is where we start getting to not only philosophical topics, theoretical topics and epistemological frameworks that people are operating on, knowledge bases that they're operating on, that they're making high level decisions with. Now, all this comes together to tell you that if you had Bitcoin as your reserve currency of the world would devolve into barbarism and you would have war very quickly. I'll give you an example. It's a true bear asset, right? Bitcoin is digital gold in the sense that if we all owned it and you did the right thing and you self-custodied it, meaning that you were the only one that holds your Bitcoin in your private, with your private keys on a cold wallet off the internet, as if you had it in a safe, which you would want to put it in a safe. If you had like a ledger device, you take your Bitcoin, you put it on that ledger device, you have your private keys where you can only get in there if you want to buy, if you want to remove it, if you want to sell it or trade it, or if you want to just store it, you don't touch it. It's off the internet. It's completely offline, off the cloud, off the internet. It's out of the digital space and it's in the analog space in that wallet. And you could take that wallet and put it in a safe, right? People lose them. You've heard of this. Let's just pretend, just for a second, I'll give you the example of why this will never happen, right? Let's pretend that the world started getting privy to this idea, very complicated idea, but let's say that we all figured it out eventually and started learning how to do it. Well, what do you think criminals are going to find out? They're going to be like, wait a minute, you're telling me every house has their financial wealth, whatever it is, small or big, on a ledger device in their house? It's not in a bank, it's in the house. How quickly do you think home break-ins are going to go through the roof? How quickly do you realize that if everybody knew that you stored your own wealth, all the money that you have on your person or at home, how quickly would people start finding a way? Who's the stronger person? People that you want to talk about real survival of the fittest, real reality of what happens with Darwinian evolution, which is obviously we don't believe that, but if you really wanted to understand what happens when you take people into a standard of true money where there's no manipulation, there's no central banking, there's no anything like that, there's no banks at all, because that's what a Bitcoin standard would do. You're going to find that the person that is the strongest, because, and this is what I'm giving you as my premise now, my true statement that I can back up through scripture, and then it goes through everything else we've always talked about, which is a revelational epistemological view on everything, tying you into the theme of my channel. My statement to you, a true statement, is that because we are totally depraved, because, and to keep that simple, we know that we're in a place where we operate under a knowledge base that is not true and just. It is actually centered upon ourselves as everything, the king of everything. We are the God. That's what our knowledge, that's what we think, right? And we might, on a horizontal level, from person to person, be good people. I know a lot of great people, better than myself, right? And a lot of people I love dearly, like my family. And I don't have ill intentions on any of them. I don't just think about myself. So when you go on a horizontal, right, you can have people that are pretty good people as far as we consider them. But when the rubber meets the road, if you took those good people and you gave them a bunch of money, they would start making decisions for self-preservation. And when you start dealing with self-preservation on a very high level, your mind gets to your head, the power gets to your head, and you don't make good decisions. It's called total depravity. You're in an inverse knowledge base. You are, in God's eyes, you are antithetical to his holy character. You are evil, total depravity, right? From me to you, we're not evil to each other, right? There are some evil people around here on our standard, but on God's standard, we're all fallen. Now, with that idea, you start giving people the idea that we all are aware that everybody around us has Bitcoin in their home on their hardware wallet, right? Crime's going to go through the roof. That's just in your country and state. What's going to happen in the Middle East? What's going to happen from nation to nation when they realize that, okay, now when we trade, it's whoever's the strongest person can trade without any type of elasticity. We can't help them out by creating money essentially and giving it to them so that we can appease them and then making interest back and subsidizing all these loans that we give them. See, what happens when you do that is you create a trading partner, and instead of fighting and bombing each other, you're now trading with each other. It's still evil. I'm not a proponent of it, okay? I'm saying that we're always having a problem with one another, country to country. We know this. We've have the history books of the world wars, of every other conflict that we've dealt with. It never ends, right? You see it today with Ukraine, Russia, Israel, Gaza. I mean, it's insane, right? It's insane how quickly things can devolve, and we can never ever get along as the human race. So if you try to take away that elasticity that high level governments, militaries, and banks use to keep the peace with one another, and I agree with everybody, it's evil, because when you debase the currency, you're killing people at the end of the day. You're pushing people into financial hardship, poverty sometimes in lesser than countries, and people are in the positions where they can't live freely because their currency is not fair and balanced. I agree with you. I agree 100%. The problem is we're already so far down the rabbit hole with that if you try to go directly in and give them a bare asset that is truly decentralized, that is a true store of value that could not be debased, and you're trading on a one-to-one basis with this global level, right? People are going to get upset with each other, and you're going to see people devolve into conflict, war, and a lot of death, even internally within the country. If people could understand that people start to hold all their value on a cold wallet in their home, it would go insane. And so you're never going to see that. And you're never going to see that with any of these strategic reserves. It's not going to happen. They will, as a government, in my opinion, and I'll end with this, create a Bitcoin strategic reserve. But alongside with that, they're going to create some form, right, and blend of, maybe it'll just be a stockpile that is Bitcoin, but then they have the digital asset reserve so that they can maintain a way to create things like we have with our US Treasury securities, right? They're going to just blend it on over through some form of digital asset reserve, where you have a blend of like Ethereum, which is perfect for all those things. You can create things like digital securities. They're going to put stuff in there like XRP because it's fast and it's quick and it's easy. They're going to put things in there, of course, like Bitcoin. That's going to be in there as a part of it. And they might choose some other currencies and projects because it's not going to be something that is going to fix the money problem. It's going to be something that keeps our hegemony, that we are the hegemonic. We are the strongest. We have the hegemony. We are the strongest power in the world. There's no possible way we're going to say, hey, this will fix the balance of power. Oh, let's go ahead and let everybody do a Bitcoin strategic reserve and we'll just do it too. And we'll all share it together. Never going to happen. Never going to happen. And it shouldn't happen. We should eventually fix our money problem. And I think it's a great step in that direction right now. The fact that Bitcoin's out here putting some checks and balances on this runaway inflation and this runaway debt that we have going on. It was definitely a necessary thing. But you're going to see a blend. So this Bitcoin maximalism needs to stop, and it needs to be something that people can start having an awareness that we're not talking about a philosophical problem being solved, like fix the money. We're not talking about a game theoretical situation that you think is going to come to fruition. The only person I've heard talk any clarity about this, and he's a pro Bitcoiner, I don't know that he's a Bitcoin maximalist, he may be, is Jason Lowry. He understands at least one thing that I would at least agree with. It's a military situation. We need to secure the digital space by being the number one country when it comes to owning Bitcoin and Bitcoin miners. Totally agree. I totally agree. So that's where I want to just put my perspective out there for anybody that was trying to bring this together, but also to put a biblical framework around it. It's because of total depravity that we cannot have something like Bitcoin on a worldwide stage. We'll devolve into barbarism so much quicker. And over time, we are going to get to a true standard, but in my opinion, but it's not going to happen through fixing the money. We're going to have to fix things from the ground up, through the culture, through families, through many different ways, through advancing God's kingdom, through advancing the gospel. And so we'll get into more of that. And you guys have a good one out there. We'll talk very soon. Bye.